For everyone who's ever said, I want to build a cat deck, this one's for you. Hello folks, Phil Gallagher, aka ThrabenU here for a rare modern video. Legacy's a bit busted right now, so some of the folks from my Discord server wanted me to play some modern. So coming from Plum Wizard and Sir Nerd is a modern black-white cat life gain deck list. So Ocelot Pride has been being called the White Ragavan on Twitter recently, which I don't really feel like is accurate. But this card is very quickly ticking up in price, and it's seeing a lot of play. A 1/1 flying, it's not even flying, it's a cat. Ugh. A 1/1 first strike lifelinker is not all that impressive. But at the beginning of your end step, if you gained life this turn, you get a 1/1 cat. If you have the City's Blessing, for each token you control that entered the battlefield this turn, you get a token that's a copy of it. So this can, in theory, start turning into 2 cats per turn cycle, which can start gaining you life with something like Guide of Souls, which can start growing your Voice of the Blessed whenever you go and gain life. It's going to get +1/+1 counters, and if you get a few on it, it starts getting Flying, Vigilance, and then even ultimately Indestructible as well. This deck also features the Cauldron Familiar combo with Witch's Oven, which is a combo that has never really impressed me in all the times that I've played with it, but has been oppressive in some lower power level formats. Essentially, the idea is you sacrifice the cat, you make a food. You sacrifice the food to bring back the cat drains your opponent for 1, and you can repeat this once per turn cycle. Which is, cool. Here it's got some extra weight to it because it does have a gain life trigger associated with it, meaning that it works with Voice of the Blessed. Now, one of the things that we haven't seen on the channel before is Recurring Nightmare's new cousin, Chthonian Nightmare. That Chthonian word is Greek in origin, meaning kind of like that it comes from the ground, that it comes from the underworld. When it enters a battlefield, you get 3 energy. You can pay X energy, sack a creature, return Chthonian Nightmare to its owner's hand, return target creature card with mana value X or less, with mana value X from your graveyard to the battlefield and activate only as a sorcery. Now, one of the things that's obnoxious about Recurring Nightmare is that it's very hard to answer because it really doesn't stay in play. A notable difference here is that this one has an enter the battlefield trigger, which you can respond to before you are able to bounce the Chthonian Nightmare to its owner's hand. And we have some things that are going to be very good to potentially bring back from the graveyard. Harvester of Misery can serve as a removal spell for small creatures early on, and a pseudo board wipe later on. Now, it is other creatures, so it will kill our own stuff, so we won't always want to bring that back, but it's a strong option to be able to do so. And when some of our creatures do die, we have the possibility of getting an Ajani Nacatyl Avenger and a cat planeswalker. What's not to like? About the only other card that I didn't recognize from this list was Jolted Awake, which is another way to get creatures back from our graveyard. The sideboard stuff here should be all stuff that you all would recognize from Legacy. So yeah, let's go ahead and hop into a league here. Should you like what you see here and you need any cards, please consider checking out toamagic.com. If you use promo code ThrabenU, when you do, you'll save 5% on your order, and they always come with free shipping. And I love not paying for shipping. With that being said, let's battle. Be still, my soul sister's heart. Turn 1, Guide of Souls. Turn 2, Voice of the Blessed. Let's go. Since this requires white, let's assume that we need at least 1 Shockland here, and we'll go to 17 now to pick up a Godless Shrine. And then I have the possibility of using the Marsh Flats for a white next turn if I don't feel like I need additional black mana. I still haven't checked whether or not I can change that animation. A year from now, I'll remember when I'm not recording. Tapped unless you control 2 of your other lands, so we're good. I guess I fire off my attack immediately. I'm not expecting a flash creature or anything. Send in. I do not have the energy to do that as of right now. Opponent goes to 19. And let's try to get our engine going here. We are unfortunately getting a response here. Oh, cool. It's just a surveil land. That's perfectly fine. The One Ring. All right, let's... There's a yield to all generating abilities option. Yes. And let's always yield to that as well. Cool. This is going to hit for a very large amount of damage next turn. And... Ooh. Opponent kept a one-lander. So, here we go. Cast Guide of Souls. No! We've got Jolted Awake, it's not that bad. So I will Jolted Awake that Guide of Souls. Subtlety pitching Psychic Frog. So that puts it on... Wait. That doesn't work, right? That's... Oh! So my opponent has countered my spell at the cost of 3 cards, which is pretty brutal. Now I will get a swamp, play a Cauldron Familiar, trigger these. Well, let's always yield to that. Go to combat. This is 3 energy. That's 3 energy, but it's not happening this turn. But I am still just hitting for 5 when my opponent has 1 land drop. So, yeah. The Subtlety Flare of Denial thing is a new one to me. I don't know what I'm playing against. I'm going to assume Control is the answer. What all does Static Prison remove? Non-land permanent. I was not, like, the most impressed by this card when I played my previous league with it in, like, the Boros Energy Shell. I think I'm kind of interested in either Thoughtseizes or Dauthi Voidwalkers in place of that, but maybe I need this to answer the One Ring. This maybe is not the best. Seems like it's going to kill a lot of my stuff and very few of my opponent's things, so I think I'm going to start by getting rid of those. And then maybe I'll trim but not cut Static Prison and just get more threat dense. My opponent is playing Pitch Elementals, maybe they're doing something that can bring them back. Yeah, no, this is a perfectly fine hand. Turn 1 Guide, turn 2 Ajani. Tamiyo. Okay, sure. Got an Orcish Bowmaster to help cover that. So I think this one can be a basic Plains. And we'll lead on the Guide. Tamiyo is an okay source of card advantage, but my opponent needs mana. Psychic Frog. Yeah, okay. I mean, that makes sense. Card's, like, very clearly busted, right? Ooh. So... this is a couple of bodies at once. Bowmasters is a good thing to just do versus Psychic Frog. I think I'm just going to Bowmaster immediately. Hello? Godless Shrine? Alright, there we go. I think I'm just doing that at sorcery speed to play around counterspells and not give my opponent more time to draw pitch cards. Yeah. I'm perfectly fine redrawing that next turn. Top. And then I will hold this back. So next turn, I've got some angles of attack. I can't really block the Psychic Frog. That card just wins combat. So my opponent gets to draw their card. And a handful of free or efficient cards could put me in pretty bad shape. Tamiyo pluses for -1 power. Yeah, okay, got it. Ooh. And playing a new Tamiyo. Now, notably... this is not an optional ability. I think we are going Land, Bowmasters, Flare of Denial. Okay. Slightly obnoxious. Is this a basic, or do I need another dual land? I think this can be a basic. I think I can save the life. I will play a Cauldron Familiar here. Get those triggers. I only have 1 energy. This attack doesn't do anything to the Tamiyo, so I will just pass the turn. And we'll see what my opponent can do here. Fatal Push is pretty bad. And I can block with a Cauldron Familiar if I want to stop my opponent from drawing a card. A little awkward with Witch's Oven about to come online. Yeah, I think I give them the card this turn so that I can attempt to do the thing on following turns. Sure. This is a -7? Yes. Oh, that's awkward. I can play that next turn. Let's play this Nightmare and hope that it resolves. No. The Witch's Oven is good with Psychic Frog blocks if my opponent does not start going to town on their own graveyard. If I play this, I can attack Tamiyo with multiple creatures in theory next turn, which is probably more important. I'm really just getting out-tempoed, and the low base power of my creatures is not doing me any favors here. My opponent can also just minus and get back a Fatal Push. I hate that my opponent is just attacking with this, and my best option is to kind of just not block. I'm going to block with the cat. I think I'm going to lose the long game if I just keep giving my opponent cards here. It just sucks. Alright, so Tamiyo is at 8. So now I will attempt to resolve a spell. That hasn't been working so well thus far. Yeah. Yeah, so I can play a Cauldron Familiar, gain 1, and then not actually get the second attack off. And at the point where my opponent draws 20 some odd cards, I do just lose. Alright, that'll do. So now I know that there's more creatures that I care about. So some of this Static Prison Path to Exile stuff becomes more potent than I thought it would be. The Voidwalkers definitely have text. They're stopping Tamiyo and slightly hampering Psychic Frog. Emphasis on the slightly. The Witch's Oven stuff feels kind of slow here. Like, it's fine if I'm playing the games on my terms, and unplayable if not. Can I get rid of all of it? Just go a little heavy on removal and a little heavier on discard to kind of punch my initial threats through. Although I guess the discard is significantly less good if my opponent has like the One Ring and Psychic Frog and Tamiyo to all make up for those 1-for-1s. Maybe that's not true. Play Cauldron Familiars without Witch's Oven. Just play them as something that triggers Guide of Soul, Voice of the Blessed. Or split. Splitting feels weird. The Witch's Oven is really bad for the most part. Without the cat, it like can do some other stuff here. I'm gonna try this. This is a 1-lander. That is incredible if I draw that extra land, and unplayable if I don't. I think I need to come out of the gates strong here. Fuck. This is a better 1-lander. They at least have plays for 2 turns. I think I get rid of this one and keep 2 removal spells, because my stuff is certainly just not resolving a good portion of the time. I can also Path to Exile one of my own cards and get a basic Plains in response to a removal spell if it happens on my turn. Alright, so mana efficiency says play this. Power of Cascading Cat Effects wants me to play this and hold up Path. But I think I'm going to attempt to optimize mana efficiency. 17. Push. You got it. And at this point, now that I have the second land, pathing my own stuff is also just, like, not the best. Sure. Do I mess with this? I don't think I mess with that. I think I just do my own thing for a turn. Like, I can just Static Prison it away if it turns into a Planeswalker before it does much damage. Sure. 14. Stern Scolding. Yep. This attack doesn't do anything. My opponent has a 0-3. Alright. We did not gain life for Ocelot Pride, unfortunately. Opponent is thinking about whether or not they want to attack, and they decide no. Is that the counterspell? That is the counterspell. Sure. It says lifelink, which is kind of cool. Static Prison sucks. Like, this is not a permanent removal spell for this card. I think I'm just going to attack in and see what happens. Hold up Path to Exile. Sure. That's a Fatal Push. Thanks, I hate it. I will drop a Guide of Souls. I think pass the turn. And potentially just Path to Exile Tamiyo now. Yeah, I'll do this now. That way we give my opponent the land tapped, not give them extra draw steps to find something to protect it. Okay. So, attempt Ocelot Pride. I would like to just resolve literally any fucking spell. I have done very, very little here in terms of deck synergy this game. They've just gotten 1 2, 3, 4, 5 different times. Fuck. That's horrific. I can static prison it out of the way temporarily, but I have no sort of persistent energy going here. So let's try to gain some energy. Cool. So that's at least cooking. That puts my opponent to 7. I have 1 base energy. This gives me 2. I take that out. I can't do the Guide of Souls thing. So I will just pass here. And I'm essentially all in. If my opponent has some sort of board wipe, like it's over for me. Mill 3 cards, get something back. Presumably Fatal Push, I guess. Flare of Denial. Oh wait, is it from the milled cards? We put a non-creature, non-land from among the cards milled this way into your hand. Sure. My opponent has a couple of things. Yes, I need to keep your 1 ring. I will do this pre-combat to see if I get to do my stuff. Nope. These are both small. I guess we can send in with everything. Or probably 4 damage. Yep, okay. So this is where my opponent is just probably going to attack, cash in that clue, draw a card, and try to find something that deals with this. If my opponent takes out this creature, I think they're fine. If they have a way to take out this static prison, and they get the 1 ring back, they're probably in quite good shape. I wonder if they had that under City Sewers prior to the draw. Was that a Cling? Okay, so that flips the Tamiyo. My opponent can plus that, meaning that these 2 creatures are not great as attackers. And it's just this one. This doesn't fly yet. Can't play this because of my basic planes. Can't do Guide of Souls stuff. So I send this here, force the block. Can't kill this. If I attack this, my opponent can't minus for Fatal Push. I guess they would block either way. Yeah, so I guess I will just send it at face and force the decision. That is another Fatal Push, unfortunately. It is possible that my opponent just stabilized. Not being able to cast my Dalthy Voidwalker to present lethal next turn was real bad. And if I don't resolve a creature right now, life's pretty awful. I think I have to prevent that. I'm probably just casting this into a counterspell. I can do this, attempt to get some life and energy. Doesn't change combat, though. I think I'm just going to pass the turn and do this in my opponent's upkeep. Cling to Dust, targeting a creature card that is going to gain life. My opponent does not have very much mana open, so I will do this now. So, bam. Yeah. Tamiyo seems uniquely well positioned versus this deck. Sure. I'm going to get either a counterspell or a Fatal Push. Yeah, it feels like this is over, and it's just a matter of time now. I just have no source of card advantage in this deck, and my cards just clunked over each other and did not have proper synergy after my synergy just got disrupted. So this gets sacrificed. I can cast this card. My opponent counters it. And then they have Tamiyo and the 1 ring. I am more than comfortable just conceding there. We just don't have what it takes to keep up with this deck.
Today's video is sponsored by Moxfield.com, and honestly, they're just the best at what they do. If you need to keep your deck lists online, this is the way to do it. They have all sorts of different viewing options. You can condense that text if you like things to be tight. You can make them visual grids. You can put them in stacks. You've got all sorts of different ways to kind of view and visualize your deck lists. And they also have some really cool functionality, like allowing you to see playtest hands and even fully playtest your decks. So check them out.
Okay, We don't have white mana. We have 5 white cards in hand. I don't think I need to explain that one to you. Rather not go to 5. Get rid of this. Static Prison sucks. And hope to top a second land here. Negative. I'm just going to get rid of that. I think that second land is very critical to find to be playing Magic. I'm just like not excited about Cauldron Familiar, Witch's Oven being one of the better things that my hand is capable of doing. Okay, it doesn't matter. We're not going to play Magic this game anyway. My opponent is just going to Grief and Ephemerate the Grief, and I'm going to lose all my agency in this game. Alright, so Witch's Oven down. There's the Ephemerate. It happens again. I've lost Voice of the Blessed. Well, there's a second land. It wouldn't have cast that creature, though. So I guess somewhat awkwardly, I'm going to try to resolve this turn around a counterspell and then get one of my 2 cats into play next turn. I do have to sacrifice a creature to fire this off, so it's not like I can just get this back immediately. So now my opponent ephemerates again. I lose a Cauldron Familiar, so that's my 3rd card lost to this Grief. Not super fun. And then there's a Prismatic Ending taking out my Chthonian Nightmare. Well, I guess we can see how good this Witch's Oven thing is going to be. So, bam, pass turn, and then we can kind of start this engine. So Modern is infested with Frog too. People have gotten the memo. So Menace I can't effectively block. 18. So sack Familiar, make a food, sack a food, get a Familiar, drain 1. Hey. Now this is starting to maybe look like something. I'll just pass the turn here, I guess. I want to be able to Cauldron Familiar, block Psychic Frog, and then do the Witch's Oven nonsense with Guide of Souls. Alright, unfortunately my opponent is going for the flying, so that's not happening. And a +1/+1 counter, sure. Oh, alright. We're just here to rumble. There's... I don't think a double block makes a ton of sense. I think I just need this Guide of Souls. I'm just going to get beat for 6. Opponent draws their card. So, anyway, there's some reason to consider drawing or doing the Witch's Oven thing before my opponent gets their Psychic Frog draw. But let's do this. See if I lose Guide of Souls or Cauldron Familiar in process. Cool. Alright, it did work. Oh, that's a lot of cat. Oh, sure. Now that's perfectly fun. And now this is just a valid blocker as well. Thanks, I hate it. You get flying? Yeah, you do get flying. Okay. So send it. Yes. This becomes a 3/4. Putting my opponent to 11. And same logic as last turn. I'll just pass the turn here. The Ephemerate coming back down probably doesn't do anything. Draw 2 cards, then discard a card unless there are 5 or more mana values. Okay, so that's not happening. So draw 2, discard a card. Traxa. Okay, this is just fucking Esper Rescaminator. Got it. So now my opponent is going to get flying, invalidate blocks, and to do their thing. This is hitting me for 7. I have no valid blocks. So I am at 8. My opponent draws their card. Sure. We'll do the whole Witch's Oven thing. And drain 1 while gaining another life with Guide of Souls. Sure. A new Guide of Souls. Sure. So I gain 1. I am at 3 energy. I can block this Grief this time. Yeah. Yeah, I think just this one. So yes. That scales this to a 5. I guess I could Witch's Oven, sack Cauldron Familiar. No, that only gains 2 energy. Yeah, okay, so I can't do this again. Alright, my opponent's at 5. I'll pass the turn. That's 4. Sure. So that Surveil land means that Psychic Frog can just get flying again. Ooh, my opponent likes their card. That's not great for me. I assume it wasn't the land that they kept. Unless this is like 5 mana, hard cast a Solitude. Alright, there's flying. Okay, opponent is not attacking with Grief. I will take 4. Down to 7. And it looks like my opponent is just passing the turn here. And let's see what we can do. I'm not super optimistic here about my chances of winning. Like, on paper, it seems good. In practice, I am incredibly nervous. More cat, huh? Cast cat. Goryo's Vengeance on Atraxa. Sure. Well, I guess that lets me know that I am not attacking this turn. Is Goryo's Vengeance exile? Yeah, exile at the beginning of the next end step. Sure. My opponent is at 2. Cauldron Familiar, enter. Activate Witch's Oven. That looks like it does it. So, triggers. I'll just yield all of those. Opponent's at 1. Sacrifice the Cauldron Familiar, make a food. They are going to Solitude their own creature to stay alive. Solitude target Atraxa, sure. But that means my combat step is valid again. So Cauldron Familiar, sacrifice food, get a bunch of triggers. I'm at 16 life when that's all said and done. And I can attack with all of these. Yep. So, pay, yes, put that here. Oh, god damn it. There's another Atraxa. I had checked the graveyard for Goryos and went, there's nothing there. God damn it. Oh, this is fucking obnoxious. So after all that, my opponent... Oh my god, there's a fucking Ephemerate too. Oh, I hate this. I guess we say yes and stack up this... It's fucking Death Touch. Ah! Oh, that's frustrating. I'm going to lose 2 creatures here. My opponent is going to Ephemerate Atraxa. Ugh. Yeah. And now there's Solitude Ephemerate coming. And just Ephemerate Atraxa. Well, that was a fun game of Magic for a little while. Scoop? Yes. Yes. What do you exile? Not relevant things. This is not valid removal versus a lot of the things that matter. My stuff's going to get exiled a decent portion of the time, but I think this is important against Grief. Kind of think Static Prison sucks as a card. Like, it's something that gets Atraxas out of the way for a little while. The instant speed matters a lot versus this deck. Let's try this when I'm on the play and play more removal when I'm on the draw. Why can't I just have a hand that casts spells? I guess I keep this. I'm gonna get rid of my 2-drop and hope to double spell next turn to make up for this Surveil land. Nope. Alright, I am now ready to get griefed and lose my 2 best cards and tilt into Oblivion. Alright, there's the Godless Shrine. No, it is just a Thoughtseize. Ocelot Pride and Guide of Souls seems similar in power levels with this hand. I feel like Guide of Souls was the correct pick. So I could Jolted Awake like a Voice of the Blessed. I think I'm just going to play a known card though. I think I want Ocelot Pride to be threatening an attack next turn. There's second line drop. That one's going to cost my opponent some life. There's Psychic Frog. Not being able to double spell super sucks here. So I'm going to path this frog out of the way. And then hopefully connect with Ocelot Pride. Solitude could do some work. Yeah, my opponent paused at kind of a weird time earlier, so I thought that was a possibility. Yeah, so now I am just down on mana after already mulliganing. This is not great. A tapped land. That means that I can't get this Douthie into play. It's fine. I think I will say that's fine. Let's Jolted Awake on Guide of Souls. Alright, so it's in play. And my mana is just going to be... Never mind. Now my opponent is at 10. It is worth playing things now because of Guide of Souls ability. Let's just yield to that. And then Cauldron Familiar. Yep. So this is up to the 3 energy that is required to start doing things that are cool. So let's try to do things that are cool. We succeed? Question mark. Hey, now Ocelot Pride does this thing, gives me another thing. We've got things happening. Oh, so there's a green... why? So now I have to wonder whether or not combat results in this fucking 7/7 body just immediately coming into play and fucking up my shit. Because my opponent mised that off of land. I guess that's why they're in the deck. Alright, do the thing. Gain life. Make cat. Gain life. Combat. If I don't attack, my opponent can just do it at the end step, get all the cards anyway, and then attack on their own turn. So, send it. Okay, cool, they didn't have it. Now when I'm on the draw, and I'm more scared of my opponent's creatures, and Douthie Voidwalker has less of a chance of coming down in a meaningful way, maybe I swap that out. I could also just, like, not do this and keep the Static Prisons. Just take a thing out of my deck that uses energy so that I can keep these around for longer. Okay. I don't love my hand. I think I'm just going to deal with it, though. Witch's Oven is not fantastic. Douthie Voidwalker is going to miss the window for stopping Psychic Frog effectively, which sucks. My opponent can just play Frog, discard Natraxa immediately with a Douthie Voidwalker on the stack, and then the Glorious Vengeance stuff is just live. Sure. Alright. Rip my agency. Alright. I lose Path to Exile, my opponent ephemerates. I'll lose something else. If my opponent chooses one of these, I can just bring it back with Jolted Awake. So they take the Jolted Awake, that makes sense. Checks out. Ooh, oh, no, okay, there is a second main phase land. Ocelot Pride not really looking great right now. I think I am just going to go ahead and play this Douthie Voidwalker in an attempt to keep the graveyard clear. Now, I lose yet another thing to this grief. Enjoy it. I would guess the Bowmasters. I am correct. Now the grief can't attack. Jolted Awake is okay. Now Ephemerate is in exile just for future reference. Send in for 3. Opponent's at 16. All Ocelot's Pride. Cast Jolted Awake on Bowmasters. My opponent's gonna draw some cards in response before my Bowmaster is in play. I will pay the energy. Ping my opponent. Now I can sacrifice this for a food, but I can't crack that food immediately. So I guess that's just my turn. 2 mana. Prismatic Ending. So I will sacrifice my creature in response to get a food so that Ocelot Pride can do some things on my own turn. I can Static Prison the Grief and just start to smack my opponent. Or I can just gain some life and do some Pride things. Being bottlenecked on mana kind of sucks. Like, this 1 mana is a really big deal. I guess if I attack with Grief, that if I attack and gain life through lifelink, that also will let this start happening. Okay. Let's get this Grief out of the way for a couple of turns then. My opponent is salting off in chat. Your name is Free My Felidar. Are you not happy? Send on it.
Gain some life. Trigger Ocelot Pride. Get 2 cats. My opponent thinks that my draws have been insane, and I have been complaining this entire game about how bad my draws have been. My opponent has said that I have drawn straight perfects all game. Okay. Sure. Straight perfects. That's what they look like right there. Meow. Opponent goes to 11. Then 7. Play Flooded Strand. Pass turn. Do the cat thing. Is this all tokens? For each token you control that entered the battlefield this turn. So I had some other lines where maybe I create some food as well. And then double the food that I create. Let's select a perfect card to the top of our library to tilt our opponent further. That's a fine card if something goes wrong. It's also just a way to get some more energy. Send in. There is a Solitude. Trigger targets Bowmasters. I will sacrifice the Bowmasters in response to make a food. My opponent will then take damage. Go to 1. Now, do I want to play this so that my opponent does not get to grief me next turn? It's a little awkward. I'll say yes. Oh, fuck, that doesn't give me the energy. So, Ocelot Pride, get some extra food. Yeah, this is templated sort of interestingly. I knew that. GG's Free My Felidar. All right, we are on the play here. I think I'm just going to shock on turn 1 so that I have the flexibility to use this to turn into a Surveil land later. And we'll play Ocelot Pride on 1 into Voice of the Blessed on 2. Are Eldrazi in this format too? No, human. Oh. Well, okay. So, does my opponent block if I attack? It's a really rough bluff attack. And I might not have 3 mana next turn to Ajani immediately, Witch's Oven, sacrifice a cat. Oh, I guess I can play this and attack into that creature to just immediately transform it if this dies and get a cat machine. Yeah. I think I am into a cat machine. Although I could just wait and not risk that. I don't know. I would be turning a 1/1 into a 2/1. Okay, so I do gain the life. Now that means that I get... Wait, why did I not get a cat warrior? Create a... Oh, if I have the City's Blessing. Right. Norin the Wary. Sure. Does this return at the beginning of the next end step? Got it. Wild. Okay. So my opponent can create a relatively large creature. So I can go Voice of the Blessed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5, 6. Swamp is fine. Swamp is fine. 7 Witch's Oven. Sacrifice a cat token. Transform my Planeswalker. I can put a +1/+1 counter on each cat I control. Send this in as a 2/2. This is a +2. I don't die to this thing either. Yeah. Okay. Sweet. And this is first strike as well. Hot. Gain life. Do this thing. There's going to be a whole lot of triggers happening there. So now I have the City's Blessing. My opponent needs to try to force some damage through on this, or I can Cataclysm them. Cats are absolutely popping the fuck off here. I can just like +2 again to just grow these cats. Okay, I'm enjoying this now. We're over the Psychic Frog trauma, and we are into the cat enthusiast stage of the league. Not only has my opponent conceded the game, they have conceded the match. Such was the power of the cat deck. Alright, I am keeping my opening hand. We're starting with a Surveil land on the other side. I'm probably starting by shocking Godless Shrine, playing Guide of Souls, and trying to keep the flexibility for this land for later. Always shock. And then which of these do I want to play? Depends
Depends a lot. Ocelot Pride is much better as a turn 1 play, I think, in a vacuum. But within the context of this hand where I may need to get like a Psychic Frog the fuck out of the way, pseudo-permanently, I think I want to play the thing that is going to give me energy. Alright, untapped white source here. Yeah. We're not going to fuck around with this. Get out. And then Ocelot Pride. And then assuming no free spells, the rest of this turn is sweet. I attack in for 1. I will not pay the energy. I need it for Static Prison. And then I make a cat friend who gives me the life. Or sorry, the energy and the life, I guess. I don't think I want to risk going down to very low energy amounts when I am like actively this far ahead on board. There's a fatal push. Sweet art. Is that Assassin's Creed? I don't know. I don't know set symbols anymore. I'm not going to pretend to understand them. So this is a new one of these. I will pay. Little bottlenecked on mana here. I think I am going to Jolted Awake this Guide of Souls. Pay the energy. Do a Cauldron Familiar. Gain a life. I have 5 energy right now. My opponent could discard 2 cards, make this into a 3/4. This also gives flying, though, which is fine for right now. So this can attack and get those counters. Yes. All right, cool. Do the thing. We've got cats, so I have quite good blockers on the ground. I have a theoretical scaling threat. I guess I could just, like, eat Agorios. And that would be unpleasant. The Psychic Frog isn't attacking, so that's great. Yes. Harvester of Misery is interesting with the Psychic Frog. Is that better than my other plays? This one does not walk into a potential counterspell. I think I'm into it. If nothing else, this gives me like a perfect read on the situation. There goes a counterspell. So this could be a 1/2. Would I trade a cat token for a random card in my opponent's hand? Yes. Yes, I would. I think I'll leave back 1 blocker. I guess Ocelot Pride is about to give me 1. No, I'm gonna leave back 1 blocker. All right, Psychic Frog discards a Cling to Dust. My opponent blocks a cat token. That's fine. I got 2 counterspells out of my opponent's hand, and I made some more cats. So ultimately, I am good with what's happening here. If the Psychic Frog flies in and draws a card, I think it's pretty hard for my opponent to live through the next combat step. Okay. So, yes, I will pay to prevent that. So my opponent can not gain life with that. 1, 2, 3, 4 incoming damage. As long as I Guide of Souls, that'll do it. Let's make damn sure. We'll trigger Guide of Souls twice. So Bowmaster my opponent's face. Guide of Souls. Guide of Souls again. Yep, that'll do. And Psychic Frog's fucking scary. I haven't seen a lot of the rest of my opponent's deck here. So I don't know exactly what's going on. I imagine that respecting the graveyard and getting creatures out of the way matters. I'm going to get rid of Harvester. On the draw here, I think I'm going to keep all my Static Prisons. Maybe I get rid of these. Sort of my endgame engine. But assuming my opponent is not connecting with Psychic Frogs repeatedly, I don't need this endgame engine because my early game stuff will do just fine. Question mark, question mark, question mark. How many lands are in this deck? How many lands are in this deck? 19. That's not enough, right? I'm not going to do the math on it, but it is not feeling like enough. So this hand plays turn 1 Guide of Souls, and then does not have a good turn 2 play. It also has no removal. I think I will just mulligan this. This hand is actively good. I think on the mull to 6, I keep 2 lands. And put back the Swamp, which is not contributing to casting these spells very well. Like, it's still the colorless mana for Ajani, but that's about it. Modern games start at 17. There is a Tamiyo. So, what do? I could remove it immediately. I don't think I'm going to remove it immediately. I'm going to play one of my 1-drops. I think I'm going to play Guide of Souls. And assume that Guide of Souls into Ocelot Pride and Path to Exile is the way that this game probably plays out. We'll see though. So no combat damage. Mishra's Bauble threatens to flip that Planeswalker. Sure. My opponent is setting that up. Oh. Okay, so they know I have the Pride. I'm getting Plains. I'm going to play the Pride that they know about. I get pushed. Now I'm not gaining life this turn to do this. Am I willing to risk the Tamiyo flipping when this is a 1/1 creature? No, I don't think I am. If I let my opponent untap, the land would enter tapped, but actual factual counterspell would then protect this card. So I think I am going to do this now and give my opponent that extra mana for the next turn. It's awkward. But with double Ocelot Pride and a Parade of Cats coming, I think I am not willing to take that risk. And then my opponent can Surveil land at end of turn here. It's Cling to Dust again. So my opponent draws the card for their Bauble. It's also just a little bit awkward if my opponent just slams a protected Psychic Frog here. What do you do? 2/2 Flying Haste with Bestow. May cast this from your graveyard using its Bestow ability. Okay, cool. So, attempt Guide of Souls. Attempt Ocelot Pride, which will gain me a life off Guide of Souls, and then trigger both of the Ocelot Prides at end of turn. And you can, like, block and everything? Yeah, you can block and everything. That's fine. So, no combat this turn, but then this happens. And it feels good. Cat's doing cat stuff. You love to see it. And then next turn I can start throwing Voice of the Blessed into the mix. I can give one of the Ocelot Pride some counters. Oh, Expressive Iteration is just legal in this format. That's right. Scalding Tarn, sure, good value. I think I'm just most afraid of a sweeper. It feels like I will keep up or beat my opponent just 1-for-1ing me, but, you know, it's a sweeper that really does me in here. Yeah, okay. So, I am going to play Ajani here. Make my cat. I can now attack with my cats, because if my opponent blocks, I get to turn this into a Planeswalker, and my opponent probably does not want that. Yeah, so those attacks have gone through, and my cats are not literally unblockable, but feels bad unblockable. There's a Psychic Frog, sure. And Molten Collapse, my Planeswalker. Unfortunate. This Spellbomb has text against my deck, like, for sure. Okay. This is fine. Let's get the basic Swamp out of the deck. Cast Voice of the Blessed. Cast Cauldron Familiar. Then this is going to trigger both of my creatures. Now, do I attack with this 2/1 Cat Warrior? My opponent can block with this and then bestow Evidence to give this flying. I guess it already kind of has flying if you look at it sideways. My opponent could draw a card with Spellbomb, turn this into a 2/3. So I guess the attack does not make sense. Man, Psychic Frog fucking sucks. And by that I obviously mean it's good, but like how much it invalidates combat is not a good thing for Magic, I think. Undercity Sewers to exile. And my opponent likes their card. They can draw it with Spellbomb. They can draw it with Clue. Clue and Spellbomb are, you know, damage sitting there for Psychic Frog. Oh, it is another Detective's Phoenix. Sure. Can you attack, though? They are not sure. Yeah. Marsh Flats is not what I want to see. So my combat step is actively bad right now. This is a 3/4, which already wins combat. So I am going to be fetching a Surveil land at end of turn here. And hoping for the best. Alright, there's the Clue. Is the Spellbomb going as well? No. Frog is coming in this time. And I don't have enough counters on this yet where it can block. So this is the part of the game where my opponent has a card advantage engine going, and I imagine things start to slip away for me. There's also a couple of Cling to Dusts in the graveyard. Molten Collapse is rough. Bowmasters is rough. I lose the Cauldron Familiar. My opponent can nuke it with Spellbomb if they want to cash in that draw. Yikes. What a absolutely crazy reversal of fortune. I don't think I have anything in my deck that beats that from here. We can try, I guess. That's not doing it. Ocelot Pride is not going to do it. I take a minimum of 9 in the air. Could take 11 in the air. Could take 12, 13 in the air. We're dead. Let's not waste the time there. I feel like I'm more or less sideboarded properly. There's not a lot I can do about EE if that happens. The Nightmare helps a little bit with that. I'm having trouble with like removal density and creature density while also trying to keep that and boarding in additional removal and Dalthy Voidwalkers. I feel like I should be boarding in the Voidwalkers. Like they matter for Murktide, they matter for Frog, matter for the Phoenix. Okay, my opening hand has 2 lands, which is something that I very much want. It has no real synergy outside of Witch's Oven, Sacrifice the Cat, produce a Planeswalker immediately. That might be good enough. I don't think I'm going to mulligan a hand that just has 2 land, given that I think my deck is Mana Light to start with. And, you know, a Planeswalker on turn 2 is not like the most acceptable thing in the world, so hopefully that just works. Don't Thoughtseize me. I would like my cat, please. Okay, I did not get Thoughtseized. Multiple Bowmasters are pretty cool. This looks like it can just be basic planes. Cat. Cat. Goodbye, cat. Cat walker. Cat friend. I haven't seen Lightning Bolt yet. I could get my Planeswalker Lightning Bolted for doing this and not plussing immediately. But this feels correct. My opponent gets their clue for attacking. I take no combat damage. And then hopefully we're doing something more unfair than what my opponent is doing. That's fine. Like, it's relevant, but it's fine. I think I'm just attacking for 2 and making another cat. And then from there, I start thinking about plussing. And I'll just pass the turn in Bowmaster. I'm not really gaining life right now with the amount of mana that I have. Tracking the food token is a little rough. Surveil time. Opponent junks their card. I'm not going to Bowmaster. Like, sometimes my Bowmaster gets counterspelled for making that decision, but I think I want to make it more awkward for my opponent. Alright, Tamiyo investigates. I take 0. There is a Psychic Frog. That is fine. It's actively good, to clarify, but, you know, it's happening. Ping you. Opponent's at 13. Card draw's a lot scarier. Not having a 3rd mana here is rough. I think I'm going to put +1/+1 counters on my cats. And I think Crash in with the cats. My opponent would need to discard 2 cards to take out a cat, discard 3 cards if they want to beat the Bowmaster trigger. Maybe they want to be doing that anyway for killing this Ajani. I'm just going to hold up another Bowmaster. But yeah, Psychic Frog is just incredibly awkward. That's a Fatal Push. I think I just replace that immediately. Just while shields are down. Just put this new one into play. So just Bowmaster, go to face. Fatal Push is targeting this. So I will sacrifice and queue up my food for later. And I'm trying to put my opponent into this position where this is threatening to do some serious work. These are threatening to lethal my opponent in one shot. And I did not give my opponent a window to safely draw cards with their Clue or Spellbomb or Psychic Frog without taking direct damage from Bowmasters. This cat deck is like surprisingly interesting to play. I think it needs some polish still, but there's some serious game here. All right, Psychic Frog things are happening. Now, Psychic Frog, its trigger is combat damage to a player or planeswalker. So if my opponent just punches Ajani, that doesn't necessarily go well. Toxic Deluge. Sure. So that kills my stuff while leaving my opponent's stuff alive. Sure. And my opponent gets to safely draw their card now. Man, double Jolted Awake sure is awkward in the face of a spell bomb. I can ultimate this planeswalker, which gets rid of Tamiyo and probably 3 clues. Or I can try to like Guide of Soul, make a cat, trigger, do that stuff. If my opponent gets rid of the spell bomb and I can double Jolted Awake for 2 Bowmasters, that's really strong. Does my opponent keep the spell bomb though? I think it's a let's find out situation. -4. Since I'm bottlenecked on mana, those clues are real cards. Fuck, they are keeping the spell bomb. So the Psychic Frog is going to eat me alive. Maybe the line was Jolted Awake a Bowmaster, force my opponent to crack. Oh, fuck. This was the line. Jolted a Bowmaster, force my opponent to crack. Ultimate my Planeswalker. This goes to graveyard as a creature. Jolted Awake it. Witch's Oven the cat. Planeswalker immediately. I guess the Planeswalker dies to Psychic Frog. Ah! Alright. I'm going to try to use 2 mana this turn. I'll target Ajani. It doesn't matter what I target. I think my opponent always just cracks this here. Yeah. I do that without them drawing a card, though. So I traded Jolted Awake for a card that was not a 0 value play. But I'm terrified now. Like, this creature is going to just massively out-tempo me. I can't win combat against it when I'm bottlenecked on mana. And singularly powerful cards like Murktide Regent are going to be incredible. Yeah. Alright, my opponent just junks that immediately. I will sacrifice my Guide of Souls to convert that into a token. My opponent gets my Witch's Oven. So, Jolted Awake, target Guide of Souls. Yes. Play Ocelot Pride. Trigger Guide of Souls. I've gained life, so Ocelot Pride triggers, getting me a cat. Now, if I play Voice of the Blessed, I start popping off. But, you know, I'm a spot removal spell away from my engine stopping. It's mostly unfortunate that my opponent just has so many different effects that can get rid of 1 or more of my creatures at the same time. Yeah, Fatal Push is incredible. So that stops my engine. Like, that alone does that, and now my opponent can fly in. If they were intending on flying in, though, they should have just flown in first, and maybe they draw a spot removal spell to stop my Ocelot Pride from popping off. Doughty Voidwalker, not great here. So, bam. I can still gain life with like lifelink since that does not have any power. I can force 1 damage through. Put my opponent to 8, gain 1 life, trigger Voice of the Blessed, which means I get a cat at end step, which can, air quotes, block Psychic Frog. But in reality, it can't block Psychic Frog. Alright. It flies. I can't block any of that. Cats do not fly. My opponent's at 8. I am at 11. My opponent can crack that clue to really invalidate my attacks here. We'll see if they do. With the Tamiyo Plus, because they have drawn 2 cards this turn, Psychic Frog being one of them. Yeah. They could also just... no, they can't minus immediately. My 1-power creatures are not doing the thing here. I can crack a food to gain life. That's not castable. I think I'm into this. So I'm going to gain the life. That gets me a counter here. And we'll... Fuck! So none of these get to do anything versus this Tamiyo attack. I make more cats, but the cats don't do anything.
Fuck. Tamio is very good against my deck. Not that Psychic Frog isn't. Oh, God. Why? He's just a little guy. Game's over. If I wasn't bottlenecked on mana and, like, you know, it's turn 8, if I can, like, play another Voice of the Blessed and crack the food token in the same turn, like, maybe we can talk, but I think just mathematically there aren't enough lands in this deck. So it's a fucking Murktide Regent, too. I will concede if that's a Murktide Regent. I'm not beating Frog, Tamio, and Murktide Regent at the same time from 2 lands. Yeah. We put up a hell of a fight, but we could not get there. The good news, we have mana. Bad news, we have nothing really to do. Do I keep? My opponent has revealed a Gigantha. I don't really know what that means. I just don't feel like I have enough gas. I'm going to try keeping this. Oh, it's my turn first. We are a second main phase hipster today. I absolutely thought that I was on the draw. Oops. It's fine. Turn 2 Cauldron Familiar with a Surveil is, like, not that bad. Are we playing against Burn? If so, my Guide of Souls is fucked. Goodbye, bud. Welcome back, bud. Jolted Awake. Pay. Untapped land that does not cost life. Do this. Gain some more life. All right, fantastic. So we are back at 20 after shocking. Okay, so we are playing against like a Boros energy deck then. Okay, yep. Got it. And opponent gets a Ragavan. Sure. Man, that swamp is biting me in the ass and keeping me from double spelling here. I think the voice is more important. I'm going to say yes. Do this. It immediately scales up by 1. So I can turn this into a valid attacker, since it will fly. I am good with that. Yes. So 3/4 flyer comes crashing in. And I've got that plus Voice of the Blessed to do some work. I can play most of my top decks next turn unless it's another white card. In which case I absolutely can't. Unstable Amulet. So that's 2 energy. When you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, deal 1 damage. And pay 2 energy to do that. Okay, got it. No attacks from my opponent. That is great for me. So, do this thing. Bowmasters. Looks like an above average draw. I will put that on top. I will play Ocelot Pride. I'll gain some energy. Okay, my opponent concedes. Static Prison was going to do a lot of work in making this combat step good. I'd probably get rid of the Amped Raptor, crash in with everything that can attack. So, Healthy Voidwalkers don't block. I'm not interested in those. Thoughtseize lose me life. I'm not interested in those. Wrath of the Skies is interesting here. I don't think I'm going to board that. I think I like my Nightmares here. I think my creatures are going to die a lot and trade a lot. I need these paths. Lage is something that I have to worry about long term. I don't think I'm worried enough about it to Douthie. I have literally no idea what to board out. Maybe some ovens are expendable. The oven Ajani thing is kind of cool, but it might be a little clunky here. All right, am I willing to keep the 1-lander? It is a 1-lander where I have 4 castable spells. Let's try it. I'm not like happy. My opponent is going to 5. I think I need to find a land in about 3 draws. Like, I think it's okay if I miss on turn 2. I don't think it's okay if I miss after that. So let's Guide of Souls and pass. There's a Lightning Bolt. No aggressive creature here. That's good for me. Missing this land drop sucks. Again, I think it's okay if I miss the turn 2 land drop. I think it's not okay if I miss the turn 3 one. Sure. There's a land to graveyard. So land in graveyard, or sorry, number of cards in graveyard is increasing for something like Flage. Raptor into Ajani. Well, my opponent had a board in a can there, and that was 2 mana for 5 power. So,
I have a shit ton of options here. I think this is the one that I am going to take. These do have first strike, which is great. But I think I am hoping to draw a land and then Cauldron Familiar plus a removal spell next turn. Like, I think that's the plan. Ooh, that's good. Alright, no attacks from my opponent. That enters tapped. I didn't technically miss the land drop. I will absolutely keep that land. So, if I play this, I get 2 more cats. I think I start trying to control my opponent's board next turn. I think I just need the raw bodies here. And then I'll have 3 mana to work with next turn. Sure. And then this raptor comes down. I get pinged. My opponent gets the energy. Is it if you cast from hand? Okay, cool. So if I block that, my opponent gets a planeswalker. So no blocks on that cat. Sure. So Chthonian Nightmare starts doing some crazy stuff. I kind of want to take out this planeswalker and then do this next turn. That probably means Path to Exile here. I guess that still gives me 2 mana. Regardless, I can fetch a white source with this. I can usually do this in upkeep and it's safe. But I might not just do it in upkeep. So get that energy. Target Guide of Souls first. Target Guide of Souls first. Sacrifice a Cauldron Familiar. Or sorry, get Guide of Souls first, rather. I could Static Prison this. This is just going to net me stuff anyway. Yeah, maybe Static Prison is just fine. I could also get rid of that. I think I'm more worried about the Planeswalker. And now I'm just going to start grinding my opponent out with cat tokens. Wall. Absolutely punished. Sure. Then there's the Ajani. Both of those trigger since that was from exile. So this is when it enters the battlefield, make a cat. So I could stop paying for this. I'm not willing to give my opponent the Planeswalker. So they get to hit me with that cat. I could stop paying for this and give my opponent 1 more cat token. Another Chthonian Nightmare. No, that runs into weird cats dying things. So, can Bowmaster kill some raptors? Turning cats into Ocelot Prides is just good. Yeah. So get 3 energy. Do this. Target Ocelot Pride. Get rid of a cat. Gain my life. Now, do I hold up path? I think I hold up path. I can pay 3 energy to make this one fly. That seems actively good. Yes. And a lifelink here will just absolutely pop off. So then I get 2 Ocelot Pride triggers at my end step. And that means 2 Guide of Soul triggers as well. Yeah. Oh, I have the City's Blessing when the next one resolves. Sure. Sure. Unlicensed hearse. Got it. So I get pinged. I'm going to gain life faster than my opponent can deal the damage, I think. The hearse is good against my Chthonian Nightmare. I can Static Prison that out of the way and just like continue to do my thing though. So at this point, I will Path to Exile that Ajani. Then this has first strike, so I'm good with that block. And then I will just trade a cat for a cat. What's going on? I will trade a different cat for a cat, apparently. That was weird. Cool. Voice of the Blessed. Hey. This is absolutely going to just pop off. So do this. Gain life with Guide of Souls. I can Static Prison something out of the way. I'll figure that out later. Send with this. Send with this. Guide of Souls. Triggers. Yes. These go on this cat, so these also fly. Yeah, and that's good enough for our opponent. And despite the fact that I know nothing about Modern, the cats came out ahead. All right. I did not expect greatness from the cats, but that was pretty good as a whole. I imagine, without doing any math, I imagine that the deck needs about 2 more lands. So I think I would be looking at cutting Harvester of Misery for 2 more lands of some kind or another similar effect. Generally speaking, I think the core of this deck was pretty reasonable. We saw the Nightmares finally pop off in the final round when they didn't do a lot in a lot of the rest of the league, partially because I sideboarded them out and partially because I just physically did not draw them. Ocelot Pride and Guide of Souls are both incredibly powerful cards when they work, and I think the same is true with Ajani, but sometimes the cards just aren't going to work. Like you just kind of end up with awkward combination of cards that don't actually accomplish too much. I have very mixed feelings about Static Prison. It feels like when things are going your way, paying the energy does not matter at all. When things aren't going your way, like, this is a very risky card. It is 1 white mana, tell something to fuck off for 3 turns, though, so that alone is still probably playable, even when the downside is very real. I would say the biggest downside of this deck is that it does not really have a source of card advantage. There's no Psychic Frog, no One Ring, anything like that, that just lets you draw a whole bunch of cards. So if the thing that this deck is trying to do in the first couple of turns is disrupted, it's a little rough. Like, this is incredibly slow and clunky as a source of card advantage, as it does also require you to have some number of creatures and something else in graveyard. And it seems like there's enough graveyard-oriented stuff around in Modern where things like spell bombs are just going to kind of be floating around. So overall, I'm going to still give the deck the thumbs up, with the caveat that I think we need a couple more lands to smooth things out. I am unsure. I didn't sideboard in these cards in any rounds. That does not mean they are bad. Wrath of the Skies, I feel like, is very, very awkward. Like, I am going to take huge collateral damage from this card some portion of the time, and I don't know the context of Modern enough to know how good this is going to be in a deck like mine that just has this many bodies. My gut feeling says this is bad, but, maybe sometimes you are doing this on 0 to obliterate an entire matchup, and, that's fine. I'm not sure how necessary Fracture is if Static Prison is a thing, and the Singleton Damping Sphere feels kind of weird. So yeah, those are my thoughts. This was largely a lot of fun. Folks, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, consider checking out toamagic.com. Promo code ThrabenU saves you a bit. And I just hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. See ya.